and that should be it. And if you can listen to me correctly, I think we're
Yeah,
pretty much set.
I think my connection is a little bit unstable at times, so hopefully we can have a smooth conversation. Anyways, let's try it.
I think that'll work. Yeah, great. All right. Well, I'll start in Spanish and then I'll switch back to English. So I'm starting the recording just as of now. Perfect. Bueno, pues qué tal a todos. Estamos aquí con Diego Delrieu. Él está en París, Francia, y acaba de regresar hace unas semanas de completar un curso de programación en China. Tiene una experiencia bastante extensa con criptomonedas, con finanzas electrónicas y lleva ya bastantes años estudiando el tema de las criptos, así es que seguramente nos puede decir algo interesante alrededor del lanzamiento de Libra, la nueva criptomoneda de Facebook y una serie de compañías que están en algo llamado la Asociación de Libra, la Libra Association. Así es que vamos a cambiar a inglés por la facilidad de la plática y pues bueno, me da mucho gusto saludar y darle la bienvenida al programa Exponente a Diego. How's it going over there, Diego? Thank you so much. Merci tellement pour ce temps maintenant.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Well, I couldn't think of a better person to think about this topic than you. So that's that's one of the main reasons why I looked for you for this particular chat. So you just came back from China a couple of months ago. You've had a fair amount of experience studying and following several cryptocurrencies and so on. So I thought you could give me a good opinion about this new emerging way of payment. Like, what are your thoughts on Facebook releasing its own cryptocurrency as of next year, if I understand correctly?
Yeah, well, I I've not totally had an opinion yet. I think I've yet to read some pieces on Libra and to really dive deeper into what it's meant to become. But from my understanding, I'm not exactly sure that it's an actual cryptocurrency. I think they're trying to take some of the features of other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or say Litecoin, and I'm not going to throw Ethereum in there because I don't think it's exactly what they're trying to do. But basically, they're building a means of payment, and they want it to be replacing, say, a payment company like Visa and MasterCard, which are part of the Libra Association. And I think it's quite interesting because they've taken some of the features of cryptocurrencies, but they've also kept a very much centralized way of approaching it. And so I'm just looking forward to reading more and seeing where that goes. I think I'm fairly skeptical at this point because I think the fact that it's coming from Facebook makes me extremely dubious as far as their intentions are concerned. And I know they've said that they're not going to keep the data and that they've created a Libra association so that it's a separate entity that keeps the data and they won't share it with Facebook and whatnot. But it's still roughly the same people, and I think they'll have to convince the general public that they have good intentions as far as this is concerned. And then, I think, one of the big, for me, the big concern as far as comparing it with other cryptocurrencies is that they are not trying to make it permissionless. And I think this is one of the core features of cryptocurrencies and what makes them so interesting in the first place. So the way you have to think about it is, for me to send Bitcoin to you, I don't need anyone's permission. I don't need to pass some kind of know your customer KYC. I don't need you to create a bank account. You don't have to justify who you are. You don't have to pass any sort of preliminary test to create an account or me neither. And we can freely send money to each other. I think, from my understanding, this is not going to be the case with Libra, at least not in the first place. And I've read that they're planning on later making it permissionless, but it's going to be permissioned based to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so you'll have to have the vetting of those big companies that will say whether or not you're fit to send money to someone else. And I think that definitely beats the purpose of a cryptocurrency in the way I envision it.
That's a very interesting point that you're saying, because the centralization or decentralization issue is part of what actually defines a cryptocurrency, or at least what we so far understand that is an elementary component of a cryptocurrency. Let me go back a few steps just for so our audience can understand a little bit more about what Facebook and the Libra Association have as their plans for the next year. So Facebook, along with some, well, they're planning to make it around 100 organizations, if I understand well. But now it should be 20, 30 organizations, among them PayPal, MasterCard, Visa, Spotify, eBay, and you name them. I mean, a really large amount of important organizations are on board with this. So apparently they all have teamed up to launch this so-called cryptocurrency. And if I understand correctly, it will be fully functional as of 2020. And the main intention is that people can transfer money in a pretty easy and immediate way without too much interference or too much intermediation. And it's aimed at making money transfers and payments a lot easier, especially in developing economies. And let's see what else we've got here. And it sort of tries to find a middle ground between full decentralization, like other cryptocurrencies, like you just mentioned, like Bitcoin maybe, or I don't know if Ethereum fulfills that case. But it also wants to please regulators and be controlled in some kind of way by this Libra Association, have some sort of council which can track transactions in a pretty, well, apparently secure and data aware way. So apparently it's like a very comfortable middle ground between a full cryptocurrency and something that governments might be okay with, and also that societies around the world can trust. But I guess it's something that we can only see as it is launched next year. It will be fully based on blockchain technology, so that's for sure. But yeah, I think that's what we can truly claim by now. And you will be able to store Libra in different wallets, and Facebook's wallet is going to be called Calibra, if I understand correctly. So there's definitely something interesting here. And by the looks of it, you wouldn't need to have a Facebook account to be able to use Libra. So that's also an interesting thing.
Wouldn't.
You wouldn't.
You would.
Apparently, you don't need to link this to any social media profile. So that's an interesting thing that Facebook had into consideration before announcing this project, because it realized that people wouldn't trust it enough if they didn't really make it fully usable as a currency. If they attached it to a social media profile. So I thought that those are important points to mention, so people in the audience can also follow the conversation. But yeah, I find this point as being pretty interesting. Finding this middle ground, being a cryptocurrency but not being fully decentralized. And you say that defeats the purpose of a cryptocurrency, but is that probably something that had to happen just so it becomes fully adopted in the US or in countries which have pretty tight financial regulations, or which have very tight money laundering measures, perhaps?
I mean, maybe. I think the regulation part is kind of tricky, because I was just reading an article on Libra this morning, and they're already in the radar of the European Commission, and I don't think they're totally on board with the project. So I think they'll have to comply to a lot of regulation, just as any other cryptocurrency, actually. And in a way, the way they have their foundation in Switzerland and everything is very similar to many other blockchain projects that are otherwise fully decentralized. Now, I think the way they approach it is the sort of, we want to keep the coolness of cryptocurrency and the apparent security and everything, but they want to keep it private. And I think I'm not sure exactly how it's going to turn out, and I'm not sure, for instance, if you'll be able to trace the transactions or whether there'll be an explorer for you to look at the blockchain and see who's been doing what on this, like you would on other cryptocurrencies. I'm not sure whether they're, mostly oriented towards privacy and this sort of thing. So there's still a lot of question marks for me, but I mean, I'm at this point, I'm not really sure what to add on this topic.
No, definitely. Well, and especially because it hasn't been launched. So since it will be launched next year in 2020, I think there's a lot of skepticism, and a lot of people have reason to doubt whether you can fully trust Facebook's cryptocurrency, because even if Facebook is not the major partner or is not the most important player, it's still a Facebook initiative. So if it turns out to be a flunk project, or if it doesn't work out, it's still going to be Facebook's fault. So I think they do have a lot of credibility to be earned. Could we pause for 1 second and talk a little bit about the blockchain technology? Because I don't know if this is sufficiently clear for a lot of people in the audience yet, but why do you think blockchain is the preferred technology that is backing up most of the existing cryptocurrencies, and also Libra in this case?
Well, I mean, I think one of the main features of a blockchain is how it's decentralized. So you don't have one central server that owns all the data, and that way you spread the risk by making it decentralized. You have you have all the data on all the servers. And for permissionless blockchains, everybody can run a server. By that I mean I can start mining Bitcoin tomorrow, and I'll have all the history of all the Bitcoin transactions since the Genesis block. In the case of
you will probably have a pretty high electric bill though by the end of the month.
You would, yeah. Oh, at least if you want to be competitive, and if you want to make money mining Bitcoin, then it's crazy expensive, and in a way that's what many people blame Bitcoin for at this time, because it's become centralized by virtue of being so expensive to mine and to be competitive at. And so you have companies that have large economies of scale and that can make money out of it, but you as a normal person living in a normal house and just with a normal computer, there's no way you're going to make money mining Bitcoin. And so only a small amount of companies can make money out of this, or running pools, and in that way it's decentralized, but it's still getting more and more centralized. So I think it's a problem with Bitcoin. But it's less so of a problem than in the case of Libra, where instead of having thousands of people mining Libra, you'll have just like those 10 or 20 companies that are already on board that will be running the nodes, and that will basically be mining the currency. I'm not sure whether they'll be rewarded for mining it, but they'll be the only ones that own the data. And so it's less centralized than having just one data center, but it is much more centralized than permissionless blockchain.
Oh, absolutely. Although I think that might be a crucial component for a cryptocurrency that wants to become like fully adopted by, especially in the Western world, and be like reliable enough for governments to trust it, and for mainstream services or mainstream companies to accept it as a method of payment, because not everyone accepts Bitcoins, right? And Bitcoin has had such a high volatility that it's also not everyone's preferred method of payment. So maybe that's that I feel like that's something that Facebook and the Libra Association want to avoid, but it's definitely interesting. So I mean, sorry. Go ahead.
Just to follow up on that, I think you're totally right. I think another thing is, whereas Bitcoin is backed by the hash power. So that's how much computing power is being provided to secure the network. Libra is backed by real life assets, so fiat currencies, and all those companies, they are locking out a certain amount of real money, so US dollars and euros and whatnot, and they can only print that many libras relative to the money that they've already those dollars that they've put into a special bank account. That way, it's more secure. It's much more stable. People know that it's backed by something, and the skeptics of Bitcoin keep saying, "But it's backed by nothing." Well, in the case of Libra, it is backed by something that everybody agrees is worth something. So it'll be very different in that sense, and I think it'll be much less volatile, also because of the adoption that one might expect from a project like this.
So I guess the main the attractiveness or the main positive aspects of Libra are its potential stability and its reliability. I guess that's one of the main issues that Facebook wanted to tackle in the first place, about it really becoming a truly adopted method of payment. For what I understand, they want it to be almost paired to $1 or very, very close to €1, so that people can have a fair frame of reference of what you can purchase with one Libra. But that remains to be seen. I mean, I guess the price that the market would also determine its market price according to how many transactions people are creating or not. But
I mean, I think there are ways to build what's called a stable coin, is exactly pegged to $1, and that way you can. Well, so the supply of coin or tokens will increase or diminish depending on how many transactions and what the demand and supply are, and so you can make it always $1. I think this is not what they plan on doing, though. I think there'll be some fluctuation. It'll be probably not as much as Bitcoin, but I think there'll be probably a certain degree of speculation. And also, I'm expecting them not to have, when it's backed by dollars, you say, okay, if you want to print €1,000 worth of Libra, you need €1,000 in your bank account. What I think they'll be doing is you print €1 million worth of Libra, but you only need 100,000 worth of euros because you're Facebook and you're too big to fail. And so it's a way for them to leverage the assets that they already have and print far more money than they actually have in their bank accounts. And that way you can have much more liquidity, you can have more people using it. And obviously the strength of their project is when Uber and Spotify and Facebook and eBay and those companies are going to be using it right off the bat, then you have already billions of users that are going to be exposed to it. And so I think it's a very strong business case to know that it's going to be integrated in all those services and that you'll have top tier engineers working on it from the get-go, and you won't have the problems that small time startups have when trying to create their own cryptocurrency. And so
absolutely.
We'll have to see how that goes.
Also, an important thing that we haven't mentioned just yet is that Libra is supposed to be almost free. So transactions will be pretty much free, or they'll be just almost non-existent fees or pretty low fees, just to pay for the gas, if you will, or pay for for the costs that are implied in transferring money and the infrastructure and so on. But that doesn't mean that Calibra, Facebook's wallet, or other services associated with the Libra Association won't be able to develop market products afterward, or lend money and charge interest and so on. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this will create a very complex environment from which a lot of financial products will be derived. Speaking of which, a lot of the articles and news I read on Libra keep saying that Facebook is reinventing money, and that the Libra Association is like revolutionizing the way that we make payments online. But you were just in China, and in other conversations, you've told me about how amazing it is to see how China has a truly digital environment in which you can pay through face recognition, services and how truly advanced they are through the usage of several cryptocurrencies. So could you tell me more about that? I mean, it sounds pretty impressive. It sounds like we are amazed by something that is not, nothing new under the sun.
Yeah, I'm losing you a little bit. Can you? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
The connection lagged a little bit, but we're fine now. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think China has made some pretty big moves in trying to get rid of cash altogether, and I think they wanted to go straight from cash to uh, they wanted to skip the payment card altogether. And the
Mm-hmm.
way they've done that is instead of trying to figure out a smarter way themselves as the government, they relied on private companies to come up with a better way to create currency, or like to facilitate payment. And so you have two companies that are Alibaba and Tencent,
Mm-hmm.
that are two of the three tech giants in China. They've both created their own sort of payment systems that are, from the user's perspective, very much like paying with cryptocurrencies. So you scan a QR code and it's debited from your account, and you send money instantly to someone else with almost no transaction fee, or maybe zero transaction fee actually. And and it's much faster and it's super efficient, and everybody uses that. I mean, for 3 months that I spent there, I've seen hardly anyone paying in any other way, and that's not just for like small transactions. It's also for paying the rent or this type of things. And you just send a text to your landlord, and
Mm-hmm.
within that text message there'll be $500 worth of rent. And
Impressive,
yeah,
right? Uh-huh.
yeah, it's crazy. It's quite different from what Facebook is trying to do, in the sense that there is no claim of it being based on blockchain. And they don't try to ride on the Bitcoin hype at all. And Bitcoin is, well, China used to be the haven for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, but it's no longer the case. And now it's, even though a lot of the big investors in cryptocurrencies are still based off China, I think they have to sort of work in the shadows, and it's very much a gray zone at this point, having cryptocurrencies in China, because I don't think the government is too enthusiastic about them. But anyways, yeah, I think they've made it work big time. I think
Mm-hmm.
people would never think of going back and either using cash or using credit cards, because they can do everything with their phone and it's super convenient. So I think if Facebook and Libra can pull that off, then they'll be in a very good position to replace fiat currencies globally. Actually, yeah, I think it's this scale of ambitions, really.
I can imagine.
But
That is a very insightful experience. I mean, spending 3 months in China, it's just like, and you were in Shenzhen, which is, by the looks of it, like the equivalent of to Silicon Valley in China. So you must have seen some truly impressive technological advancements there. Um, let's see. So we've talked about the potential of Libra, it not being by the looks of it, it truly tries to take the very best or the most the sexiest aspects of cryptocurrencies and trying to land that into something that the general public will use or will want to use or will trust sufficiently to use in the Western world. Which leads me to the next question. At the end of the day, this show is about entrepreneurship and how to turn ideas into businesses and in the end. So what do you think will be the effect of Libra for entrepreneurs or for people who want to launch their own business idea, people who are selling goods online? Do you think it will truly empower small businesses or people who are trying to launch their business idea?
I mean, it's possible. I think one of the ways it could definitely do that is by making transactions across countries much more much less costly and much faster. I think right now, like sending money globally, I think the average cost is 9% on the average transaction.
Which is a lot, right?
It's just crazy when you think about it. If you send $1,000 somewhere else, you have to pay almost $100 just to send that money, and that's money that you'll never see ever again, and your money that might need it will never see it either. So I think those are crazy costs, especially for a small business. The way that this might change is you have those. Well, it makes sense to pay that much money for big transactions, but it makes much less sense for smaller transactions, and the micro transactions will be much more frequent, and you can have easier exchanges with other parts of the world. And I think that's true for e-commerce. That's definitely true for software. I think that'll be true for a lot of companies that will be able to accept payments from other countries much faster and in a much easier way. I think I was in Korea last year, and one thing that struck me was it's almost impossible if you're not Korean to buy something online in Korea, because you need a Korean phone number to even think of buying something. They don't take Visa, they don't take MasterCard anywhere. And so as a foreigner in Korea, you can't buy anything online. And so if you have that global currency that you can use anywhere you go, then that facilitates the exchange. But again, that assumes that it'll be easy for businesses to get on board, that Facebook and that conglomerate will be helping small businesses to implement the Libra wallets and to use it, and it'll be cheap for them to use it as well. So I think there's a lot of assumptions that still have to be confirmed. But I think this has the potential to really facilitate business globally, especially for like startups and small businesses.
Well, definitely, and particularly if it really reduces transaction costs. I mean, that would be pretty significant, particularly for people who are transferring money to from developed nations to developing economies. I think that would be a pretty important aspect of Libra. Well, it seems like it's meant to be a pretty interesting project, and the level of adoption seems promising. I mean, you mentioned it already. If eBay, Uber, Spotify, and you're essentially everything that the millennial generation consumes online adopts Libra, you can bet on a fair amount of people.
It's not just the millennial. I think it's almost all the generations. I think now the average age on Facebook is rising every year, and you have older and older people getting on Facebook. And I think that like most people are getting away from Facebook, except the older generations. They're the only ones that are still signing up to Facebook. And it's so interesting, I think, to see how like those companies that were thought of as startups 15 years ago have become like so traditional in a sense, and they've become like establishment companies,
Wow, you actually, I had never thought about that, but you just made me realize of something which is quite interesting, and this is a little bit slightly apart from the general conversation, but I think the younger generations are becoming increasingly skeptical, at least during the last couple of years, especially with the Cambridge Analytica scandal on Facebook, and having your data exposed is a little bit frightening to a younger generation, and increasingly so, especially in Europe, I think. But what I also notice is that as older people, and especially people who live alone, or elderly people who feel lonely, join Facebook, I think they have a very pleasant way of remembering, pictures, of exchanging memories with family members, especially family members and friends whom they haven't seen in a while. And that is a very interesting phenomenon, how older people and elderly people are increasingly joining social media, particularly Facebook. I had never thought about that. But it might also be a very, very comfortable way of also relieving a little bit of perhaps a little bit of loneliness also that is involved in aging,
Sure, but also I think they were they were the ones that were skeptical 10 years ago when we signed up, and now they think it's cool, and that you know, they've heard so much about it that it's become normal to hear about Facebook on the news. And just 20 minutes ago, I was helping my 90-year-old grandma on how to do a Google search. And, you know, like
Uh-huh.
when we were younger, Google was a startup and it was like the coolest place on earth. And but now it's obviously everybody uses it, but it's become to that point where actually everybody uses it. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, one of the thoughts that I had about Libra is that Facebook is like, or that conglomerate is trying to build the bank of the future. And, you know, when we think of JP Morgan and whatnot, maybe our grandchildren will see Facebook as those like super established companies that are like, that have been here forever and that represent the establishment and that are funding political campaigns and whatnot, because this is where they're heading. They're doing it in a different way, but, you know, they're obviously gigantic companies, but they're also becoming more and more influent in the cultural space in many ways that were not expected at first. I think it's it's curious to see how they're diversifying into the public space.
Well, absolutely. That's a very interesting thought, and I think it makes good food for thought. I think I'll write an article on on that topic for next week because it just opened up my eyes to something that I had never reflected upon. Thanks for that insight. That is a pretty good one. Well, unfortunately, we might be running out of time, but I don't want to finish the conversation without leaving you maybe a last reflection, or do you have any last thoughts that you would like to share with the audience, or maybe some last reflections on either Libra or how cryptocurrencies are being adopted? Anything related to that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one final thought that I have about it is I think I hope that Libra will be the time for Bitcoin to shine. And I think Libra and hopefully the failures of Libra will highlight the needs for Bitcoin and actual genuine cryptocurrencies. I think we talk so much about Libra, it's all over the news. And actually, again, my grandma was asking me about it, how I thought Libra would impact my Bitcoin stash. And I had no idea how to answer that question. But now I think my opinion on this is the more we talk about it, the better the better it's doing. And I think there's a chance that Libra and all the companies that are behind it, if they fail, this will show that there is an idea behind it. And the initial idea was Bitcoin. And I think people should go back to this initial idea, because the way Facebook only took what they were interested in is not the full package, and the full package is far more interesting than its different parts. And so I think maybe it's going to be beneficial to cryptocurrencies as a whole in the future, and regardless, it'll make it far more mainstream than it is at this point. So I'm optimistic and definitely looking forward to seeing how it develops.
Well, I can definitely imagine. Well, and also Bitcoin has been rising lately, for what I understand. So I think ultimately a widespread adoption of Libra could boost the price of Bitcoin considerably. It could even stabilize it for quite a while, if not permanently. So we'll have to see. But I guess it's a good time to invest in the mainstream cryptos too. We'll see.
Or maybe it's the worst time.
Probably,
we'll have to.
You never know. Probably. I do have some cash in some Chinese Bitcoin, so hopefully I hope that they do increase in value. In any case, I'll just leave them there and see what happens.
Yeah, as
Great.
we do.
Well, Diego, thank you so much for this conversation again.
It's my pleasure, dude.
There are quite a few insights that I think are really interesting and that will be good reflection points for our audience. So I'll say goodbye, but once again, much appreciated. C'était un plaisir. Et on se voit à la prochaine. So until the next time.
Hasta luego, dude. Yeah, pleasure speaking to you.
Hasta luego, estimado amigo. Ahí lo tienen a Diego Delrieu hablando desde París, Francia, sobre criptomonedas y en particular este proyecto de Facebook y de la asociación Libra. Vamos a ver cómo evoluciona a partir del siguiente año ya que esté lanzada como un método de pago y pues bueno, le seguiremos la pista. Continuamos en Exponente. Hacemos una pausa, ya volvemos. Okay, great. So I'll stop the recording.